Willkommen, bienvenue, welcome once again. I didn't think we'd be making this podcast, but I have to say, it's kind of Groundhog Day for Stephanie.
Mm-hmm.
She's been here before. We both have, actually. So I don't know how many of you guys remember that small thing called a pandemic, that period of 2.5, 3 years where the world lost its mind and people were either segregated or found themselves isolated, either through design or through mistake or whatever. People would go into hospitals, and I'm afraid to say some of them didn't come back out again. Stephanie contracted COVID. What year was that?
December 2020.
Right. I contracted COVID a little bit earlier than that. I was hospitalized for just over 3 weeks, during which time they wanted to ventilate me. I refused, and luckily it came out the other side. Stephanie and I both, I would say you far worse than I, have contracted long COVID, which actually is less of a disease in itself and more a series of unmanageable symptoms.
A collection of chronic medical conditions. Because a lot of people, there are 18 million people in the world with long COVID. I read that last week.
I'm surprised.
It might be more than that in the world. 18, and I don't know if it's 18 million people in America with long COVID.
But it's a good chunk of people.
And people still don't even know what long COVID is.
Well, because it manifests differently. You see, for me, when I was diagnosed with it, it's because I some days suffer from chronic fatigue, and also word memory loss. I can't even remember any of the major functions I'm supposed to do. I have to take that day off. I have to wait it out. It's gotten better, I would say, over time. Now, for you, how does it manifest?
So I had COVID, what I call COVID in December. And again, just for everyone when people say they don't know what long COVID is a series of conditions that present themselves a few months, 2-3 months or so after you have had COVID. The
important thing is you've gotten past all the previous COVID-related symptoms.
Right. It's not a carryover.
It's almost like getting a second wind, isn't it?
So long COVID can affect major systems across the body, meaning your heart, your pulmonary system or respiratory system, your nervous system, your brain. Just major systems across the body. And it is and can be a monster. It can be debilitating. And the thing that's scary about COVID, long COVID, is that at this point, they have not determined why some people get it and why other people don't. And I still don't know how it is that I wound up with long COVID, but I did. And my major long COVID symptoms are post-exertional malaise, which is also, you might see it as the acronym PEM, brain fog. And brain fog in long COVID patients is like having a traumatic brain injury. And so how does that show up? Well, it shows up in, I know what it is that I want to say. I can see the word that I want to say, but somewhere between my mind and my mouth, I struggle and am tripping all over myself to get that word out.
Yeah. And it varies, doesn't it? You can have it. You can have it all day today, and by tomorrow it could have lessened.
And I will go through periods where I'm like, okay, wait, I know what I want to say, but. And the other thing is appetite, but that's more connected to the neurological part of the body. And so for me, no
What
sense
about
of
taste?
smell and taste.
I lose complete taste. So there can be, I can go a week with no flavor in anything and it comes back again.
Mine hasn't come back.
You got no,
I have not had any real now one of the things that I do notice has happened is that it be before up until this point, my latest development, I can have these periods where there's a faint something, or if it's like a really strong bad smell, as a general rule, I can pick that up. But I haven't had any real sense of taste and smell for easily 2.5 years, because I will have had long COVID for 4 years as of February 2021. So the latest chapter, and the reason that I've gotten out of my sick bed to record today, is because yesterday morning I learned that I now have COVID. I have now have had COVID for the second time. And when I say COVID, I mean COVID, the one that we've all heard about, the one that people talk about, and all of that. And so the thing I want to say is, my symptoms manifested and showed up beginning on Monday. And bad, really super bad cough. I mean, the cough, man, hurt my lungs, my blood oxygen level, struggling with that, panting, difficulty catching breath. Those are things that I deal with as part of having long COVID too. Just my sense of taste and smell is really, really, really tamped down, even more than it was before. Congestion.
We got to get that back, otherwise you're never going to enjoy my wife's cooking properly.
I mean, it's just, but the coughing thing is horrible.
Yeah.
And the congestion and tightness in my chest. I do sound better now, but the question marks are going to remain. So this time what's happening is, and this is, I don't understand why we keep doing this to ourselves. But part of the challenge with the pandemic, the initial pandemic, was that people just were so slow in ramping up.
Right.
And so because I have long COVID, I still keep track of all the surges, the things that are happening with COVID, and long COVID around the world. So we no longer report on a day-to-day basis what those COVID numbers are. And that's fine. That may not be necessary given the level, the amount and level of transmission. Maybe it's once a week that we report. But the way that they are now measuring transmission and surges and all of that is through wastewater. So, and to me, that's really not a good way of doing that. But, I don't want to get launch into that part of it. For me right now, it raises questions. And I don't know that there are any answers at the moment, because I don't know how my having COVID, the second go round, will impact my long COVID. Is it going to make it much worse? Because I had plateaued. I had plateaued at around 70 to 75% of where I was pre-COVID. I don't know what that means for me. I am doing some form of contact tracing because I am treated at the Ohio State University Wexner Medical Center, which is a major research institution. And so I've been enrolled in my own self-tracking to see, what my experience with this virus has been and is this time around. But I don't know.
If I can reference it to my own experience,
I
used to experience 5 to 10 days a month of extreme long COVID symptoms. Mm-hmm. And I would have brain fog every other day.
Mm-hmm.
Now it's down to 2 or 3 days a month,
Mm-hmm.
and I have brain fog once a week.
Mm-hmm.
So I don't know if that gives you any hope, but it does improve.
Well, and see, it for me, this is what I will say. So my first year with long COVID, I thought I was going to die. I really did. I seriously thought I am not going to get through this because the slightest thing, it's like people, I think about it, the way I explain it is that it's kind of like when you go to the bank. Every single day, I have a certain bank of energy. And if I expend all of my money, expend all of my energy, then in the early days, if I expend my bank balance of energy was very, very, very small. And so it was easy to spend all of it up on a day-to-day basis. Well,
Sure.
if I spent it up, then that meant I was out. I would be out for a week. I would be out for several days. It has been over the last 3+ years now, teeny tiny baby steps. And so I do still experience setbacks, but those setbacks don't push me to the point where I am out of commission for days and weeks and
Well,
months
I remember
and time.
in the early days that
Mhm.
we would do a number of recordings, and then there'll be a day when you say, I can't do it.
Right. I'm just too wiped out. I can't do it.
Right. Well,
And
that's
right,
only happened once in the last 6 months or so.
right.
But
So it's
I just
yeah.
from my own sight, I've seen you improve.
Well, and the thing is that because of the treatment, I also do receive continuity of care in front because I'm in the post-COVID program at Ohio State. So those things that I have done, baby teeny tiny steps forward, have all helped. My biggest fear in getting COVID was, okay, what is this going to cost me? Because it's taken me all this time. It already cost having COVID cost me my job. Long COVID cost me my job because I couldn't do it anymore. Which in a way, well, no, I would say given the type of job I had and environment that I was in was a blessing in disguise. But I digress for just a moment. It's like, what is it going to cost me? And so that's the question mark. So I guess my point in coming on and talking about this today is for a couple of things. Number one, and I don't mean to be a spoil sport or rain on anyone's parade, but it just has to be said, you got to be very diligent in taking care of yourself because we don't necessarily have some of the same resources in place now that we did during the pandemic. So for example, I wanted to get a PCR test. I wasn't just going to run in somewhere and say, give me a rapid test. No, 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 no. Anytime when I felt like, okay, I might have been exposed, I need a PCR test.
Right.
So my doctor, my long COVID internist, ordered it. And I go to the lab and I get into the lab and they're like, I can go to any OSU lab. I go in there and they're like, oh, we don't do that anymore. And I'm like, well, what do you mean? So in order for me, it's not that they don't do PCR tests, but I've got to either be in the hospital for them to give me one. And so then the question was, they weren't refusing to do it, but they had to think about, well, how is it that we can get her tested? So I ultimately wound up having to do, and they made an appointment for me at my doctor's office. And I had a nurse appointment and I went and the nurse swabbed my nose and gave me a test. So my point in saying that is you've got to be and do your own due diligence.
Is that free? Was that free?
No. And that's the other thing.
You have to pay for it?
Yeah. Yeah. Vaccines are not free. None of this stuff is free anymore. It was, but not anymore. It's not. And so people don't have money to go out and do all these.
Can you give me a clue? How much is this?
I have no idea, but I haven't even. But okay, so let me say this. Unlike when I had COVID and when you had COVID, because we were early in the pandemic,
Right, very early.
Paxlovid, they didn't have Paxlovid. So the question became when I got my results yesterday, can you take Paxlovid? They determined that I could and promptly sent my prescription to the pharmacy that I have used for the 36 years that I've lived in Columbus. Then I get a call because I have an insurance company, the insurance company from Hades, because I'm not going to use the other word that I want to use just in case I don't want to get dinged. They're a horrible insurance company. And
is it the famous American one?
I don't know. It's famous in America for not providing. They are the insurance company would be considered the insurance company of last resort. And they're considered that because they treat a number of people who receive Medicaid, Medicare. I don't receive those things, but because I go to I'm treated at an institution that treats everyone regardless of income level, I had to choose that. All of my doctors who I see for long COVID are on this plan, so I had no choice but to pay. But let me tell you this.
People denigrate the NHS, but we just don't have any of those kind of issues.
Well, it's going to get even better. So I find out that the insurance company I have, my pharmacy doesn't have a contract with them to provide the medication. Right. So if I want to go and get it, it's going to cost me out of pocket. I have a discount drug card, but that's not going to apply there. It's not going to take enough off. So my out-of-pocket cost for Paxlovid is $1,700. And right now, I'm in the process of trying to figure out how I got to go to a different pharmacy, which I don't have a problem with that. And so right now, I've got to.
Have you got to pay $1,700?
No, I'm not going to. I'm not going to pay that. But I'm going to wind up. That gets back to the point that I was making. The reason that you have to do your due diligence and you've got to try to stay on top of what's happening with COVID and pay attention is so that you're not in a situation where you're just having to expend all kinds of money that you don't necessarily have.
Can I ask that you check out a gentleman who is he's a professor, a doctor, and a professional nurse who he was for many years. His name is Dr. Campbell. He has a channel on YouTube, which is famous for being completely unbiased and only focused on facts. And I would like you to watch some of his stuff there. He's been work this out. Go ahead. I'm sorry. No, not at all. You just hurt.
But the thing is that, Gareth, I've been here too many times in situations like this, too many times before.
I feel my stress levels raising.
No, I'm not. I mean, I'm not. Last week we didn't record because my son got married, and my son got married out in California.
A beautiful ceremony. Yeah, a wonderful setting.
Yeah, it was absolutely spectacular. Absolutely. And loved every minute of it. And I am extremely happy for him.
And you looked very pretty and a very nice.
Thank you, Gareth. And everything, just really happy and everything. But I had to give a toast, and I'm not good at stuff like that. It's my preference always to hide in plain sight. But the thing that I said to my son was how proud I was of him, because, I said, look, we've been in so many places that are tough and that are difficult. And for me, this is one of them. I don't know what my future holds, but in reality, none of us does. And so sometimes we just have to take stuff one baby step at a time.
And I think, just to round this off, because we need to pull this
Right.
to a close, I think if there's one thing that either of us can take from your current experience and from our experience of contracting COVID and the long COVID, is we need to take it one step at a time.
Right.
And
Well,
that's all we can do is deal with what's right in front of us.
Right. Well, and this is the thing that I used to say to my kids, and I'll say this to you, especially, and that's why I tell you, don't worry about this whole thing with the medication, because, and what I'm going to do and how I'm going to pay for it, because this is one of those instances, those moments where I look at a situation, and my children and I, especially in those early days, it's like, well, how are we going to pay for school supplies? How are we going to get gas for the car? How are we going to buy food to eat? Just, how are we just going to get through this week because I don't get paid until Friday and the refrigerator is empty? How am I going to navigate this very, very difficult, tough space that I'm in right now at my job? And the thing I used to say to them all the time is, there is an answer. There is a solution, at least one solution. But right now we just don't know what it is.
Absolutely.
And sometimes, maybe more times than we would really like to admit, sometimes that solution doesn't always present itself right away.
No, in fact,
it's about timing.
Often the solution that presents itself right away isn't the right final solution.
Right.
Because it's often like a sticking plaster just to cover the cracks.
Mm-hmm.
It doesn't actually fill the cracks in. And sometimes you got to resist running for the first thing that comes into your mind, just because it's, all I got to do is find X amount of money and pay this, and suddenly everything will be fine. Right. It might be that if you stood back and you did a bit of this and a bit of that and you pulled them together, that would be a better long-term solution. And I say that to all of you out there. Stop before you make a decision about what you're going to do next, and think, if I do this course of action, maybe it'll relieve things now, but will it actually work for me further down the line? It may well not. So spend a little bit more time in preparation. Remember those.
And also, and I'm sorry to interrupt you,
no,
the other thing that I am also learning the importance of is discernment, is being still, listening, and being quiet.
There's a lot to be said for that.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, and on that note, I'm going to wish you all a wonderful weekend, and to you, Stephanie, I'm going to wish you speedy recovery, and hopefully we'll be back to regular viewings from here on in. But well, no, look, there's only so many weddings you can be dragged along to. So, but look, and from us to your son and his new wife, I wish them much success and going forward. And to all of you out there, I want you to keep your feet firmly on the ground, but keep pushing forward, keep reaching for the stars, and look after that mental health until next week. I wish you all well. Bye-bye now.
Oh.